Hi, and welcome to another episode of Kuntarkis. My name is Michael Yon, and this episode is Gateway to Freedom. This started with me asking Kuntarkis about any out-of-body experiences, any adventures that he had had recently.
I've been having a lot of unusual experiences in connecting with Elon Musk,
Yeah.
and it's been 3 nights in a row and different circumstances. And apparently, he was searching for something, and it was a metallic plate, a very shiny metallic plate with all these inscriptions on it. And the inscriptions are frequencies, and when expressed verbally, the plate reacts and it does something. I have no idea what. He was explaining this to me and he was looking for it. And he had, like, say, I don't know, maybe 30 other people searching. And he was searching in this old, unusual building that the floor of concrete, or whatever the floor was, timber, had been removed. And underneath it was sand and rock. And they were digging. They could only do hand digging, and they were digging. And I asked him, I said, Mr. Musk, he said, don't call me Mr. Musk. He said, please, you insult me. He said, call me Elon, you know me. And I said, okay, Elon, I know you. And he said to me about this metallic disc. And the disc, he describes it as being about half-inch thick, which is what, a centimeter. It's about 60 centimeters long and about, say, 350 millimeters wide. And it had all this inscription upon it. And apparently it also had some formulation on the back. But he said he didn't know about the formulation, but he understood that the front of it had tremendous technology advancement that's far beyond any human understanding. And this is what he was telling me. And I said, oh, wow. I said, that'd be interesting to find. He said, I am desperate. I need to find this. And that's why I connected to you. I know you know. And I looked at him and I said, oh, okay, I'm glad you have some form of trust in me. He said, I do. I said, is that why we've connected on other times? He said, yes. I said, how do we connect? He said, we just do, through thoughts. You mean thought consciousness? He said, yes. He said, I've read some of your materials. I've listened to some of your podcasts. And I was saying to myself quietly, oh my God, he's listened to some of my podcasts. And I said to him, do you mind me asking, which one did you enjoy? And he said, I enjoyed conscious evolution and I enjoyed imagination. And I also enjoyed Planet Nakaris, the 6 episodes. And I said, wow. So when did you listen to the 6? He said, just recently. Because then it made me think that it was only just put up, not that long ago. And I goes, wow. And he said, yes. He said, interesting knowledge. He said, I'm fascinated by knowledge, and I'm also fascinated by your understanding of living energy. He said, I want to know about living energy. I said, well, why don't you contact me physically? And he just stared at me for a few moments. And he said, yes. And then he walked away. And I said, all right. And he went to all these other people like he was instructing them. And I was just walking around on the sand and just, pushing sand aside. And I hit this rock and I said, oh, what's this? And I just dug under the sand and there was this rock. But the rock it was a rock, but it was flat, little lumpy, not much. It's like it's been carved, like a long time ago. And I looked at it and I started pushing away the sand. I pushed it away and pushed it away. And it was a bit bigger than the size that he explained to me. A bit bigger than, say, 60 centimeters and 35 centimeters wide and, a centimeter thick. So I sort of dug down the sides, and it went down about, say, probably maybe 6 centimeters. And as I pushed all the sand away, and it took me a little while, I pushed it all away, because it kept sort of floating back down again, like moving down. So I kept pushing away, and I finally got it. And I said, wow, what is this? And I hit it on the top, and it sounded a little hollow. So I sort of tried to see if there was some way of picking it up, and I couldn't see any join whatsoever. And I looked at it, and then something said to me, bang it 5 times. That's what it said, like bang it. Instantly came to me. So I went bang, bang, bang with my fist on the side, bang, and I did it 5 times, and suddenly I heard whoosh, and I said, my God, what was that? And it's like I smelt stale air. And I grabbed it and pushed it, and it moved. And what it was about 2.5 centimeters thick. And I pulled it off, and it was heavy, but to me, it wasn't. And I just pushed it over to the side. And as soon as I pushed it over to the side, this silver object, when I pulled away this unusual type of material that looked brand new, it shone and it lit up. And I looked over and I could see Elon Musk looking at me with a massive smile on his face. And he come running over and he stopped. He said, oh my God, you found it. They told me you would find it, Kuntarkis. And he bent down. I didn't want to touch it. He bent down, put his fingers and sort of lifted it up. And it was quite heavy. And he picked it up and he took the material off it. And there were all these really, really unusual inscriptions. That's what I would call it, inscriptions. And formulations of something like, what do they call those things? The Egyptians?
And hieroglyphics?
Hieroglyphics, but very different. Very different. And it seemed to be carved into this metal. And he picked it up, and as I said, he pulled off the material, and he looked at it, and he held it directly in front of him. And he said, I found it. But there's one, and he looked back at me, but he said, there's one issue. I said, what's that? He said, I'm in spirit world. Even though I'm in the physical, I'm still in spirit world. And I found it with your help, 100% in spirit world. But we're in the physical world. I said, that's correct. He said, that's the issue. I can't take anything back. But he said, I'll remember. I'll remember. And he said it 3 times. And then I woke up. That was it.
Oh,
so
wow.
It was very interesting.
Yeah. It's very intelligent for him to know that he's in spirit world.
Yeah. I think there's a higher form of consciousness within him because of his intellectual intelligence when it comes to technology. And I think he thinks in a very high level of consciousness when it comes to that form of technology. And I think that's why he was able to do what he did, especially last night.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was that.
Brilliant. That's a great story. That's a great one. Yeah.
The one after it's not very good, mate. Oh, then again, no, I shouldn't say that. It actually is good. I told Misha about it at lunchtime today when we were eating, and it wasn't long. But when I came back, I woke up and I thought about it. I sat up in the bed and I thought about what just happened, and I said, "Wow, that connection is getting stronger. That's really interesting." And Misha was quite fascinated by it too. And then I told her about this one. And what it was, I went back to sleep. I laid back down, went on my side, and I said, I now go into spirit world. something there is calling me. I can feel it. And it must have been only a few moments, and I went back into a deep sleep. And I remember walking in spirit world. And then I looked up and I saw the dome. And I said, I must go up there. So I straight up the top. And I opened it up and I looked in. And I could see that there were the ones in there that I have already placed in there. And I closed it back up again. And I came down to the ground and I heard this yelling, like it was like a woman really, really yelling out. And there was other people, like a man, but I couldn't understand the language. And I went straight down, and there were these two African men, really big, really tall, like about 6 foot, probably 6'4", 6'6", and quite large men, not overweight, but large. And they had these eyes on inside their heads that were really big. You know, they looked really frightening. And what they were doing, they were grabbing the children of these people who were the grandparents, and they were going to take the children. And they were Asian. I think they were Chinese, actually, Chinese. And I came down and I tapped the two men with both, like, left and right hand on their shoulder. And I moved back slightly, and they spun around, let go of the kids, and one pulled out this knife and tried to attack me with it. And I instantly laid him out. And the other one came to grab me, and he did grab me, pulling me down, and then he wanted to punch me. But I reversed his punch and grabbed it, and I drove it right up under his throat. And he fell straight to the ground. And then I came down and I just walloped them really badly, really walloped them badly. And then I broke their bodies up, and like I've done before, and literally rolled them into a circle and put this energy field around them. And they were from 6 foot, say 4 or 6'6", to just a ball type thing. And all you could see were the eyes looking out of this ball. And they were in pain. You could tell they were in tremendous pain, being squashed so bad. And the ball would have been about, I don't know, maybe 80 to 90 centimeters in diameter. And I left the balls there sitting on the ground, and I went straight up to this elderly gentleman who was Asian, probably well into his 60s, and also this other gentleman. And there were two elderly ladies. And I would say, from what I understood, these kids were their grandkids. And they died in a massive mudslide where they were living in China on a farm. And they were left with the grandparents for 10 days, while the parents went out onto another farm somewhere and did all this work to get money, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And when the side of the mountain came down, it literally covered their house and everything. And they actually died in the house from suffocation. The air ran out because you can tell there was no damage to the clothes, no damage to their bodies. They just looked very frail. And when I said, please sit. So we sat on the, well, let's call it a floor in the spirit world. And I explained to them that they were no longer alive, because they were saying to me they couldn't find their daughter or their son. And I explained why. And this happened over 150 years ago. So the son and the daughter would have passed away a long time ago, and no one would have known the difference in time. So I explained it all to them, and they understood, because being Chinese and being quite old, they understood the philosophy of the Eastern culture about reincarnation and the wheel of life, but they only believed in one wheel of life. And I just explained about it, and they actually understood, because it made so much sense to them about so many millions upon millions, in fact, thousands of millions of people all over the world could not just be on one wheel of life. There had to be more, and there were millions. So they actually accepted that. So one of the ladies, she said to me, she said, can you tell me who you are? And I said, my name is Kuntarkis. I said, I live on a mountain and it's called Toowoomba in Australia. And they said, we have never heard of that, which they wouldn't have, being over 150 years ago, and naturally not. And I explained everything to them and what I actually do, and they were quite fascinated by that. They said to me, they said, so you're called Kuntarkis? I said, that's right. And they said, they did tell me their names, but I'm sorry, their names were very complicated and I didn't remember them. But I said to them about the light, and I said, it is time, because all of you, including your grandchildren, look very peaceful. You don't seem to have a lot of negative conditioning or emotions going on. And they say, no, we love our grandchildren and our grandchildren love us. And our children themselves are very loving and very warm-hearted. That's how they were explaining it. So I said, okay, have you heard of the light? And they asked me to explain, which I did, about the tunnel of light. And when I explained that, I said, I want you all to concentrate just to my right. And I want you to visualize that there is a beam of light expanding outwardly probably about, say, three meters. And they asked me to explain what meters were. So I said about, 10 feet in diameter. And they did. And about, say, it could be 30 seconds, it could be a minute, I saw the light appearing. And I said, they were looking at it and saying, wow, what do we do with this? I said, you go through it. And they said, we all can go through it. And I said, yes, I can feel that everything is perfectly balanced, so you can all go through it. They said, would you help guide us? I said, yes, I will. So we all stood up and they all came over and gave me a big embracement, every one of them. The two grandparents and like the women and the two men and then the children. And it was just really, really beautiful. And I could feel the heart actually beaming. So that was really, really balanced. So we walked over and I said, if you take those two and you take those two, I said, you'll go through the light, all holding hands. And they did, like a trail. And they all started to walk through, and it was a male on one of them went through first. And they just followed like a train going through a tunnel. And they all just disappeared. And just as they went through, the last little girl, she turned and looked at me and waved. And she said, Mutaya, Mutaya. And I don't know what that actually means, but it's not that important to find out. But it must have been like, say, I thank you or something like that. And I just smiled, and then she disappeared in the light. And several seconds later, the light just went to nothing. And I said, wow, this is what I've been doing a lot more. So it must be part of what I do. I went back and I saw the two balls still on the ground, and I picked them up, grabbed them, and I flew up over to the dome, which took me only a few moments. And I opened up and I dumped them in, and I'm just going to leave them there exactly the way they were. And the funny thing is, when they hit the ground, the ones already down there, which weren't many, but there's a few, they were just flabbergasted. Because when these two balls hit, which were quite large, as I said to you, about, 80 centimeters to 90 centimeters, it bounced. They both bounced. Bouncy, bouncy, bouncy. And they were laughing. These people down there were laughing. And yet they're criminals, massive murderers and all that type of stuff. Not a lot, but only a few. And then I closed up and I started flying, and then I felt that I was going back, and I suddenly woke up. And that was that experience.
Wow, yeah. Very good. It doesn't ever get old, does it, when you help people go through the light?
No, mate, it's a beautiful thing. It makes your heart grow, by the way. It really makes you grow in your feelings that there are really beautiful people on this planet. There are a lot of horrible, ugly people who have caused so much disaster, so much pain and misery to humanity worldwide. And the funny thing is, I wrote a few things today about that. I changed a lot when it came to human disease. That's right, about human disease. So very interesting, mate.
Yeah. So you said you've had, did you say you had 3 nights in a row with Elon Musk?
Yes,
Wow.
yes, yeah. Different little things. The one last night was longer. The other ones were quite short. He was on a train, and I end up getting on the train, and I was asking myself, why am I getting on a train? And I looked at the train, and this was just no ordinary train. It was bright silver and very elegant in its appearance on the outside. And when I went to the door, well, whoever was behind it opened the door up, and it was quite a large train, quite deep. And this man said to me, he opened the door and he said, "Welcome." He said, "Someone is waiting for you." I said, "Oh." He said, "Yes, just come in." And he said, "Turn left down there, walk down the little aisle, and it's number 3. Just knock 3 times on the door." Oh, okay, 3 times on the door. So I did. And I walked down. I saw the number 3, and number 3 was it was shaped like a hieroglyphic in a way. That was really unusual. And the door suddenly opened, and right in front of me, was Elon Musk. And he said to me, come in, Kuntarkis, come in." And I said, "All right." I said, "This is becoming really familiar, really familiar." And we sat and talked about different things. We talked a lot about robots. He asked my opinion, and he said to me, he said, "I got to ask you a question." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Do you believe in robotics?" And I said, "To a point." He said, "So you don't really believe in them, do you?" I said, "There is a reason why." I said, "I have a friend. His name is Samuel, and he lives many millions of light years from planet Earth." He goes, "Really?" I said, "Yes." And I said, "He is a full-on living energy manifestation as a robot. He doesn't have a consciousness, but he has a very high frequency of intelligence, and he can formulate intelligence through data and decipher it however he chooses to, because he is created by the alien race called the Nipulans in that world, which is still physical." He goes, "Oh, really?" He said, "Could I ever meet him?" I said, "I don't think so in this lifetime. He would never come to Earth." He goes, "Oh." And he said, "Is there a reason why?" I said, "Yes." I said, "If you knew the true history of humanity, you would understand why higher entities of any description would never come to this planet. And the main reason is because we have been here, let's say 928,000 years as human history. Long before that, it goes back over 41 million years. And the amount of violence that was created then with over 200 different alien races was absolutely horrendously massive. And the amount of deaths was in the millions and millions. And they were all different types of alien races. And all they wanted was the resources of planet Earth to own them. He goes, "Oh, so what's so wrong now with the last 928,000 years?" And I said, 157,000 violent wars. And I said, between 17 and 19 billion human people, whether they're soldiers or civilians, were massacred and murdered, and children by the millions were raped and even eaten back then. He goes, "Oh, oh." So he said, "You're saying it's a very negative situation here on Earth." I said, 100%. The amount of karma has increased hundreds of thousands of times. And I said, until humanity takes full realization of what is occurring and what has occurred and learn to deal with that negative energy, and I mean every single individual, nothing will change here. We'll always be in a negative state of very low consciousness. He goes, oh. He said, why is it some of us are fairly smart? I said, because we don't live in that type of world. But the world around us does. Look at the wars, I said. I said, Elon, that's going on right at this time. All created by very sick, perverted presidents, emperors, whatever you want to call them, military. They have caused so much, and they're still doing it today in this moment. All that has to stop. War does not solve anything. You will never gain peace from war. And this is what I explained to him. And he said to me, I have a tendency to agree with you. I'm not into war either. And we spoke for a little bit more about different things about robots and things like that. And he asked my opinion about how would I create a robot when it came to expressions. I said I would create a robot with an individual that had inner and outer knowledge without the emotions that were negative. Because the data that goes into a robot can become a negative to humanity. And I explained it in a lot more different ways because I don't really remember a lot of it because there was a lot of talking going on. And after we finished all that, he had a green tea. And I had a green tea. And I could see the mist coming off the heat. And I drank it. And it was one of the most beautiful types of green teas I've ever drunk. It was very similar to matcha green tea that Misha and I actually have sometimes. So I really enjoyed it. I was quite fascinated by it. And I could feel it, the heat going down my throat into my non-existent stomach. So that was that.
Yeah, you say that because many people that are having a out-of-body experience wouldn't experience nearly as much heat and reality.
This is something that I think we as humanity, we really need to learn and listen to. And what I'm writing at the moment, because of my experiences, I'm taking parts of things out and changing them to, how would you say, to more current forms of understanding that all things are possible through thought consciousness. If you want to grow consciously, you have to grow healthy. When you grow healthy in mind, body, spirit, and soul, you open up all the doorways to infinity. And that's what I am experiencing. Not boasting about it, just expressing my truth. I've noticed within myself, my visions, my travels, so many different things, Michael, have opened up. And I don't talk about it a lot in depth. Even helping different spirits in spirit world, saving their existence so they don't have to live the same BS every moment of that reality. And that's what I did last night. I saved those 4 lots of grandparents with the grandchildren from reliving this horrible experience and learning to let that go and go through the light. They spent over 150 human years in that spirit world, that formulated vibration of their own formulated consciousness, so they could learn to exist. And they have. Now they exist in the tunnel of light, where things will become more clear for them. And that's of 100% positivity.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. Wow, that's really great. And you have, I mean, there's only ever occasional nights that go by where you don't have recollection of whatever your adventure may have been these
There,
days.
there, yeah, there are a lot of times, Michael, where I don't have memory of it, and it can happen 3 or 4 days later. And most of the time, I don't even concern myself with it. But there are certain experiences, especially in helping others, which helps me consciously to evolve. But helping them, but also meeting with someone like Elon Musk. I mean, there's no way I can contact him physically, because you just can't do that. You just never get there. Yet he's recognized me. He also recognizes me as Kuntarkis because at one experience, when we first made contact, I explained to him who he was in his previous life as Nikola Tesla. And he was fascinated by that. And we spoke for a long period of time. And I explained what happened to him, who was trying to kill him, and especially with that Thomas Edison, who stole all his material through the FBI, which was Edgar Hoover. So he was fascinated by all that. So look at him now. He's now nearly a trillionaire. And he's doing all these robotics. He's doing all these satellites that are going to go into space so no one can grab the technology and, say, operate the robotics, whatever they may be, the robots. So he's using a very high form of intelligence within himself. He's also expressed to me, this was last night, that I have helped him in his own awareness of his own intelligence and how he can get it through his mind. And he is actually working through his mind, more so than his human logical brain. But he doesn't talk about it to anyone because he said to me he doesn't have enough understanding to actually present it. But he wants to learn about living energy.
Yeah, brilliant. He might not have many around him that really are interested in talking about
No,
that either, using the mind
no.
versus the brain. Yeah.
They're all logical scientists who work in a logical formulation, and that's it.
You must have helped him understand that he's actually from another planet himself.
Yes, I have. I spoke to him on that second time where we met and we sat, and I'm not sure where it was, but he was acting a little strange. He was really taking recognition of me being where I was. And we spoke a lot about that. So that was a good point. So there is something inside of Elon Musk that is being activated. But at the same time, he is helping me in my own awareness. And it's funny that it's only him from a physical point that I'm connecting with. I've tried to connect with Mel Gibson. Very difficult. I tried to connect with Dwayne Johnson. Impossible. And then I discovered why. It's because their consciousness is at a third lower vibration. And they have no awareness of that form of understanding. Their only understanding is making money, becoming famous and being recognized, and also making movies. Because all those type of people, they just love movies. And then you'll get one like, no disrespect to Mel Gibson, I've always admired his acting. I think he's one of the most brilliant actors, most natural actors. And that's really good. And now he's formulating a massive company with Matt Damien and I don't know who she is. but she's well known. She's an actress, I think, too. And they're creating a company to produce genuine movies without the BS of sexually perverted idiots like Disney World and all that type of stuff that is creating. Because they're all, a lot of them are all pedophiles. So they believe, especially Mel Gibson, he really believes in God because he did that Christ thing. So he believes in that. And that's okay. If that's what you want to believe in, that's your choice. No one's got a right to tell you you can't. So, yeah. So, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. But yeah, connecting with those two and maybe others you've tried to connect to hasn't worked. But for some reason well, I mean, Elon Musk is more special. He is from Nakaris as well.
Yes. Yes. I've known him for several lives as an Acharon.
Wow.
I've also saved his life because he was never what you would call a brilliant warrior. He was always a deep thinker. So he was taken out of being a warrior and asked what he'd like to do. And he worked with technology. And I believe that's why his technology today is advancing the way it is, because of his cellular memory within his own being, whether it's his physical or his spirit. If I had, honestly, Michael, if I had the opportunity to sit with him and explain things to him physically, all about living energy and how these different alien races have adapted to it and what they've created, I believe he would be completely flabbergasted and would want to learn more. In fact, learn how to use living energy.
Yeah, I'm sure he asked you a lot about Samuel.
Say that again?
I'm sure he asked you a lot about Samuel, the AI alien.
Yes, he did, mate. Yes, he did. Yes, yes, yes. If I ever could have the opportunity, to take Elon Musk into spirit world, I would arrange a connection at this particular place, probably more likely the Shikani Castle in spirit world, and get him to meet Samuel. And probably Samuel would be quite impressed with what he has accomplished on Earth when it comes to technology.
What did, like when he was Nikola Tesla and he died fairly broke, and well, he was killed and he died
He
fairly
died
broke.
as a pauper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he swear to himself that when I come back in the next life, I'm just going to kill it? You know what I mean? That I'm just going to make a lot of money and do really well. And did he swing the pendulum?
Yeah, well, that's a question I can't answer because I haven't heard that and he hasn't said that to me. But I believe there's a very big possibility in that. Yes, I do.
Do spirits do that sometimes? They say, well, that's the life I've just had. I don't want that again. I want practically the opposite.
Absolutely. Yes. See, this is the thing. This is the thing about learning knowledge. When you begin your path of your journey to having a deeper understanding of what, say, reality truly is, you dig deeper and deeper and deeper. And as you dig deeper and deeper, you'll find more is revealed. It always starts at the base. And as you grow consciously and elevate your own consciousness, more higher levels of knowledge come into your path. And you keep learning because that's your path. The whole point is to set yourself free from your physical self. And that's why I explained to you, what was it, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, or just before Christmas? I can't fully remember, but I explained to you about who is the real essence of life. Is it your physical or is it your spirit? Let's not talk about the soul because the soul is your divinity. and you are a facet of your own soul. So in reality, you are your soul. So you are the true reality of life as living energy. Your body, when it eventually decides to take its last breath, that's it. You even hear the breath dissipate from the body. And the body is no longer alive, physically, even spiritually. And when the spirit comes out of the body, it can hang around the earth vibration for a small period of time, or sometimes it'll just fly out straight into the spirit world and be totally confused. And that's why so many, I'm talking millions of spirits, have no idea that they are literally, physically dead. They are still living their existence. And that's why the Nipulans are now running, sounds a bit strange, are now running seminars whenever they want to, and they have thousands that attend it, and they create everything for them in comfort. Sometimes it's above ground, which is the spirit ground. Sometimes it's on the ground, and they communicate and express the truth about what spirit is and what the physical is. The reason Adra explained to me that they're doing it is because that's what I was doing. And that impressed them so much because they'd been watching me for a very long time since I've been here. How I do things, what I say, how I'm so motivated within myself. And they're now doing it. They asked my permission, and I was really honored that they asked my permission. And I said, well, I'm not going to say you don't have to. All I'm going to say is thank you for your, your respect in doing that. And you can tell that they're a race totally respectful, totally loving.
Yeah. And you say that they will never really visit here on a physical level, but in the spirit world, they're free to help out there.
Yes, yes. They were a little concerned because they haven't done it before, the way it's been done in spirit world with the earthly vibration. And they were a little bit concerned. There was a concern that they may be affected if they were in spirit world of humanity.
Energetically.
But once I started to do what I was doing and they were watching me, and then when Yinika approached me and we started communicating, and then Vimira and a couple of others, but I never found out their actual name. But then Adra, that was it. They just now do it. So it's not an issue. And sometimes I'm called to it because they want a physical person that is in a physical body relating to them and expressing to them about the things they want to talk about. So it's good. It's working everywhere in spirit world.
Yeah, that is amazing. That's so special.
It
Historical.
is, yeah.
It's historical.
Yep. It is, mate.
Yeah, it's never happened before. Wow.
Yeah. I'm very impressed with you because you listen without judgment. And I think deep down your heart says, wow, the impossible can be possible. So you don't place limitations on what you understand or what you're willing to understand. And that means you're the type of being that wants to grow consciously.
Thanks. Yes, I do. Yeah, it's only when I... Go on.
It'll set you free, mate, because you'll suddenly have a realization when you're so consciously aware of your spirit that it's the spirit that has the real essence of life as living energy. And even your cellular memory from all your lifetimes. And when you're a spirit in spirit world and you have that formulation of understanding, you can open up your cellular memory and say, show me a life that I lived, say, 200 years ago on Earth. Or show me a life that I could have existed on Dorothea. Or the planet Nakaris. And you'll be shown, like a vision right in front of you, like it's a television. That's energy. And they say, everything is energy, and energy is everything.
Brilliant. Yeah.
You got to believe it. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. And that imagination's such a strong factor in that, but it isn't about making up. It's about making, I guess, the connection between those energies.
Absolutely. If you look at it as mind, body, spirit, and soul, if you live purely in your physical existence as a third-dimensional being with a human logical brain, without even knowing you can create new pathways, then you will never know your spirit. You will never know your imagination. You will never know your mind. And you most certainly will never know your soul. And that's really sad, because that's happening to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of human people today. And the only way is to inspire them beyond inspiration, so they use their imagination and see that all things are possible. Call this the gateway to freedom.
It's been a good one. I've really liked this. See, just one question is all it took.
Yes, it has. You should actually call this, mate, gateway to freedom.
Gateway to freedom. Okay.
Gateway to freedom. Because it is. It's like standing in front of a door and you find the courage to open it, not knowing what's behind it. And you open it and suddenly you feel peaceful. And you walk in and there's another door. You open it and you feel better again. And there's another door, another door, another door, another door, another door. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. That's the different levels of understanding your own consciousness.
I like that.
Yeah, that's the Nakaran way. When you're willing to go beyond the door that you see in front of you, then you must be willing to understand who you are in your own consciousness. And that's where you begin your journey of freedom. From the conditioning that has been put upon us by society and by kings, queens, governments, monarchs, all that.
Which has turned into our karma.
Absolutely. And we have to let it go. And you know the funny thing, Michael? If we grow consciously and take up different levels of understanding, we learn to let go of karma in such an easy way, because even though we're responsible, we've been hijacked through conditioning of our societies. And that's why we follow the stupidity of people who are really sick in the head. And they control us. And every single one of them on this planet who run countries are sick in the head. Because look at them. They're all willing to go to war and push their people into war and slaughter them and have them slaughtering the other country, creating more karma. But do we look at that? No, we don't.
Or we just treat it as the way the world is at the moment, which is not right.
Conditioning.
Yeah.
Conditioning, yes.
Conditioned to think it's just normal.
Yes. You know, if we wake up every morning, no matter what, and we forget about all the BS that's going on in the world, and we say to ourselves, what a wonderful day. I feel so balanced. I feel so good. We get up, we have a shower, maybe eat something or have a tea or a coffee or a juice. We may go to the shops. Suddenly we feel angry because we got all these people around that are really going through a lot of negative situations. They're racing around like idiots. But if we just stop for a moment, right where we are, and just feel the light emanating from the heart and say, I am an individual. I am living energy. And I disperse all the negativity that's around me. And I place a bubble of light within me and around me. I am in perfect balance with all things. If you believe that you're actually doing it, which you are, if you believe, you will just feel peaceful and you won't react to the negativity.
Most people are reacting to the negativity without any awareness that that's what it
Yes.
is. They think it's them. They think, I hate shopping, I hate being here.
They do. Yes, they do. Yes, mate, they do.
This concludes another episode of Kuntarkis. If you'd like to find out more about Kuntarkis, find his website, which is etcconsciousness.com. He has articles there, he has his books listed there, and also if you have any reason to contact us in general for any reason, just email kuntarkis@gmail.com. That's it for now. Thanks so much for listening. My name is Michael Yon, and stay tuned for more.